Alright, what is up everybody? It's Joe from JLW Games coming at you with another cool video. Now, the audio to this video actually did turn out not the greatest because I used an external mic and it was a very weird quality. Like, it wasn't horrible, it just sounded really weird. So I'm just gonna dub over everything here. Today in this video, I decided to build a $500 computer. So this is a cheaper one from the last one, and honestly, it actually has a good visual to it. So if you look around here, this is what we've got. We've actually got some cable extension kits, so it looks a little bit nicer on the cables for the 24 pin, and you know, the graphics card, CPU, all those are going to be cable extensions that has like a white and black look to it. We have a black and white case, and we also have a nice MSI micro board. So this is a micro board. It's the first time I used a micro board in a build, and it's Intel B365M Pro VDH. It's actually not too bad of a motherboard visually. It's a pretty basic board, but it will work for a Core i3 that we're putting in, the 9100F, which only is a little over $70 for a quad-core processor. It's actually not too bad. And I also bought this blue LED cooler for it because we're going to want all the lights to be blue in it. It doesn't really need RGB, so I decided to go the cheaper route because the person I'm building this for wanted to make sure all the lights were blue, so I decided to go LED instead of RGB because it would be a little cheaper because they wanted blue lights in it for sure. So this is just a nice little basic cooler that we're going to use in place of the stock cooler. It'll look a little bit nicer, and it has a little blue LED ring around it, which will give it a nice look. We went with the EVGA. This is a 450 watt power supply, I believe. It has black cables, not ketchup and mustard cables, which is actually a good thing. And then for our RAM, we got the Oli, I can't pronounce it, but this is a new manufacturer of RAM as far as I've heard, and these are two 8GB sticks of RAM. I believe they're 3000 speed. It was actually a really good deal for the 16 gigs. So, and they're black. They got a nice accent to them. I think they look good. So I had no problem with picking these up. I know a lot of people have avoided them just because they don't know them that well, but I was like, for this build, it's going to be perfect. And I think they're going to work very, very good for what we're doing. And the person I'm building it for specifically wanted 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I went with these ones right here because, again, we had a $500 budget. Now for our storage, we have a 120 gigabyte SSD Sunbow. This was only like a, oh gosh, I think it was like a $17 SSD, which is actually a good price. So I was hoping that would actually turn out. It was a little bit of a risk because it is a cheaper SSD, and we went with a Western Digital 2 terabyte hard drive because they did want some good space on it. And I went with Western Digital just because it was a little bit of the cheaper option. And for the graphics card, this is actually not what I used. I didn't use any of these. This box had a Radeon HD 7850 in it. It didn't. I just had it in the box of my 1080 Ti, so it had a box to be in, but that's not actually what I end up using in the video because I actually end up using a 660 Ti for the video. The GPU that I got for this build actually hasn't arrived yet, so I was going to put in a temporary one just for the build. The actual one I got was an RX 570, but we went with that. So actually going in, we install the CPU first. This isn't going to be as detailed as the last one, but this is our i3-9100F. It's a good value quad-core processor, and it actually works really, really well. Going and putting it in, I had no problems with the CPU. Fit in very easily, and we have the little plastic cover. Be sure to keep those, by the way, just in case you need to put these things back in storage or need to send them back. You do have to have that plastic cover, so good to keep those. On the Intel ones, always have the little plastic covers, so good idea to keep those. I didn't have any thermal compound for this. I had the didn't have any pre-applied with the cooler, which I was unsure of if it did, and I had just a tad bit left, and from the last few builds that I did, which it did not end up being enough. I actually had to use the one that came with the processor itself. It was just in a little packet, and it ended up actually working just fine, but there was a little bracket here for the cooler for the Intel. which actually worked really easily. It was actually one of the easier installations. You just put it in, and then you put these little peg pieces on the corner pieces, and it actually puts it right in place. It was a very easy installation overall, and I actually put it in sideways wrong right there, and I figured this out by the next, or in a second. So actually, no, did I put it in? Oh, no, I don't think I did. But anyways, but you see I got my thermal compound on there. It was a very cheap kind of thermal paste, but like, you know, for what this build is, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. We're not going to be overclocking or anything. I'm not even sure if you can overclock with a CPU, but getting the cooler on there, it turned out quite nicely. Very painless, and it was easy to put in. You just kind of, you know, put the brackets on. And then as for the RAM here, very simple as well. Actually, I looked in the instructions to see which slots to use, but it actually wasn't in the manual, and I had to look on the board. The board actually had it on there saying, hey, use these slots first, and I actually found it on the board of which slots to use, and for this particular board, it was slots 2 and 4, which actually was more helpful, and I think it looked better visually because you get to see the RAM sticks a little bit better. Now, fun thing to note, keep an eye on that second RAM stick of how that turned out, because that's the reason why I didn't get it to post right away. I don't know what it is with me and RAM, but I can't get it in properly apparently. But we get the motherboard in, no problem. I get all the screws in, and it was actually looking quite nice, and I was actually very happy of how this build was turning out, because, you know, we got all this black and white, and it looks great visually, and that's the one thing I wanted to do with this, was have good aesthetics. So now we get in the power supply, and this was a pretty good deal on this power supply, I thought. For a 450 watt power supply without ketchup and mustard cables, it actually turned out really good. Then I installed 3 fans. I got a pack of 3 fans. These are blue LED fans, so the front 2 and the back fan are all LEDs. So these front ones I have doing intake, and then the back one I'm doing exhaust, and then of course we have the cooler as well, which should be enough cooling for this system. So I think I did a good job on how that works, and I think we'll get some good airflow going through these. These fans were only $15 for the pack of 3 of them, because I wanted to just, you know, I wanted to get that visual in there and get those blue lights, more blue lights in the system, because they wanted it to light up quite nicely with the blue lights, and so I went with the fans, get some LED fans, and it actually turned out nicely. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. So getting that white, black with blue lights, and the end result was actually pretty good. And this case was a heck of a deal. I actually really like this case for what it is, and it actually was only a $40 case actually. And white cases are really nice aesthetic wise, and after building it, I couldn't have been more excited and happy. So going on to the back here, you can see the only downside to this case is there's not a whole lot of room for cable management, and I did struggle with that just a little bit, but now we go ahead and get the drives installed. This is the SSD and the hard drive. Now you can mount the SSDs on the back, but I decided to go and put it in the tray just so we had more room for cable management in the end, and we're using both trays. We don't have any other drives. If I had another hard drive, maybe, but I decided to go ahead and put them in both drives because that's how it worked the best. So moving on a little bit, we did a little bit of cable, got the drives installed, and now I'm doing some cable management. This is where I get the 24-pin connector or extension, and I have to say, after using these, I have to say I'm probably going to use these pretty much on every build now, because they just make the PC aesthetically look great. The only time I wouldn't use them is if we didn't have a side panel that was see-through, and this one we did, so I wanted to make sure the inside looked good. So getting that installed, I also got the optical drive installed because who I'm building this for wanted to have an optical drive. This is the biggest issue I had with this build, was the optical drive. Getting in the way of the 24-pin, it actually sat right in front of the 24-pin connector, which made this a very difficult thing to get in, but I did fit it in just enough to get it in there properly. The SATA cables just got in the way. because those SATA cables sat right in front of it, so I had to like curve the cable extension around it. If I had the regular cables, it may not have been too hard, but since I had the cable extensions, it probably made it a little bit more difficult because they're a little bit more or a lot bigger and everything. But the optical drive I was able to get in. Me personally, I don't care for the optical drive. It's the one part of the build that I think makes it look a little I didn't really care for how that looked, but we got the SATA cables going in. We got all of our other connections in, our front panel connectors, our HD audio, all that fun stuff. That's the only thing that had a little bit of ketchup and mustard cables going in, and I just had a couple more fans and stuff to still install at this point. So after that, we got the fans installed. I have to say and the GPU, again, I put in the 660 Ti, which actually looks really good with this build. I'm kind of sad that I'm not going to end up using it, but it does look pretty solid with the color scheme, since it's kind of got the gray, black, and everything like that, and it looks pretty solid. So, and another thing I didn't actually know, I forgot to plug in the other extension into the rest of, the little, or plug into the GPU, so that's another reason I didn't post right away. But you can see the CPU connector at top, the 24-pin was issue, and then the CPU connector up here. I'm glad I had that extension. If I didn't, the cable probably wouldn't have reached, because I did not have an opening at the top I could go through, and the extension actually makes it look pretty good. So a little bit of cable management here and there that I have to go through, and the biggest thing was trying to figure out where the little wires would go for the fans. That's always my biggest issue, trying to figure out the fan wires, because they kind of get everywhere. So I kind of wish there was a little cover up there so you couldn't see the front panel connectors. I do end up like kind of zip tying those together to make them look a little bit better since they're in view. But overall, I was pretty happy with my cable management. It wasn't perfect, but I was able to get the side panel on, and that's all that really matters, right? And again, this was the only downside with this case is, again, cable management was a little bit tough because it was a little bit tight in the back, but we were able to manage it up and get it going pretty well. So again, this is only about a $500 build, and I was very surprised of how good I got it to look aesthetically, and got the hardware that I wanted to put in as well, for $500 or so. So that was actually pretty impressive. I went a little over it was about $528, but so the graphics card does get replaced with an RX 570, which doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing, but it still looks okay because, it's for the most part just a black card as well. So it's just a little bit smaller, but the 660 Ti really looked good in this system, and but I decided to go ahead and keep my 660 Ti and decided to use the RX 570 because, again, this PC is not going to be used for intense gaming, so it doesn't need to have anything too crazy inside of it. So but yeah, visually it looks fantastic, and this is me turning it on for the very first time, hoping to get a post screen, but that didn't work out the greatest, but it does turn on at least, so that was the good thing. But it looks fantastic. I was really excited about it, and as you can tell, it was good. So but I was so excited. I was so confident that I was going to get a post screen right away. As you can see it turn on, it looked fantastic with the blue lights, the blue LEDs and everything. It actually was pretty stunning, and I still didn't have the graphics card plugged in properly because I needed that second pin that I didn't realize, and for some reason I didn't put it in. Stupid me, just being stupid. And one of the RAM sticks was not all the way in, which I thought I for sure had in, but apparently I didn't. So, and I was very surprised that the LED fans could actually shine through the front. Kind of gave it a cool little aesthetic, I wasn't expecting that. But you get those two blue circles around, which actually looks pretty cool. And then of course we had to change the screens to see if we can get a post screen coming up as well, which unfortunately we didn't get. So then after some tinkering, got the RAM stick in, got the connector in on the GPU, we actually got to the post screen. So it's always the RAM sticks, man. I don't know what it is about me and the RAM sticks, but that always happens every single time. But this is me going through, just making sure everything's showing up. So we have our i3-9100F quad-core CPU at 6.3 gigahertz, which is actually not too shabby for the price. Again, I didn't need anything too crazy in this PC, so I thought we did a good job picking the parts for this particular build. Our CPU is at 39 degrees Celsius, which I believe is a really good temperature. Again, we had just turned it on too, so it hadn't really warmed up that much, but it's staying nice and cool in there, which is a good thing. But everything, the DRAM frequency was at 24 megahertz. I don't know if that's a thing, but it's supposed to be 3000, but again, I don't know. I think that's the max it can get to potentially, but it was at 2400 megahertz, and you can see our hard drives are showing up as well. The 120 gigabytes and the terabyte hard drive was also showing up, or 2 terabyte hard drive was also showing up, which is good. But visually, it looked fantastic, and I couldn't be more happy with this. I did go back and actually fix a little bit of the cable management. You can see some of those SATA cables kind of dangling around, I have to pull those a little bit tighter, and those will be in a good shape and everything. But yeah, besides some minor cable management adjustments, this looked great. Me pointing out that I forgot to plug in the second pin for the GPU because I'm dumb, but actually the RX 570 only needed one of those pins, so I actually have one of them left over, or for extension left over, which actually makes me excited because I actually have a extra pin I can use, or an extra plug-in or the cable that I can use for maybe another build eventually. I did have the hard drive kind of pulled out just a little bit, but that's because I was making sure it wasn't the 24 pin that was being disconnected by the hard drive when I was trying to get to the post screen, but that ended up not being the case. It was just the RAM, so everything turned out great. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe for more amazing content like this. And of course, I will be getting into my next build hopefully soon, but we'll see how soon that is. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the very next video. Thanks, and goodbye.